Welcome everyone, and according to where you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the latest in a series of global webinars organised and sponsored by the Eye on Earth Alliance. My name is Derek Glidden, and I am the organiser and host for today's webinar. I work for the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi, one of the founder members of the Eye on Earth movement, and I'm speaking to you from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. So Eye on Earth is a global movement launched in 2011. Eye on Earth's mission is to enable stronger integration of the environment in sustainable development by enabling all stakeholders to have data and information and knowledge that they need. Guided by a suite of 14 principles aligned with Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, Eye on Earth is about facilitating knowledge exchange within and between specializations and geographies. The Eye on Earth movement has two main components. First, a convening and governing partnership of some of the foremost data and information-focused organizations in the environmental dimension of sustainable development. And they are, in alphabetical order, the Group on Earth Observations, GEO, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, also headquartered just down the road from Geneva, UN Environment, their headquarters in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya, and the World Resources Institute in Washington, D.C. And finally, my employer, the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi, to whom a special word of thanks is extended for providing the staff time and enabling the technology for this webinar series. And the second and core component of Eye on Earth is yourselves, a multidisciplinary, truly global community of experts defined by a shared passion for the Eye on Earth mission, vision, and principles. The magnitude and diversity of knowledge within the Eye on Earth community is demonstrated by the number and distribution of people who have registered for today's webinar. You are over 330 people from 91 different countries, and you represent every part of the globe. Whether you're attending here today live or watching the recording afterwards, welcome. Now it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce today's three speakers. Because we have three speakers, I will provide only a very brief summary for each expert. Contact details for each speaker will be shown during the question and answer session. Our first distinguished speaker is Annie Lukak. Annie is Senior Documentation and Information Officer at the IUCN Environmental Law Center. She has been leading the maintenance, management and development of EcoLex since its creation. Annie has extensive experience in knowledge management, internet research and information services. She is engaged in planning, coordinating and implementing information and documentation related projects. Annie has a master's in political science and public law from the University of Bonn in Germany, and it is indeed from Bonn that she speaks to us today. Our second speaker is Andres Feather-Robio. Andres is legal officer in the FAO Development Law Service, where he has worked since 2014. Andres is mainly focused on coordinating FAOLEX, one of the world's largest public databases of national laws, regulations, and policies on food, agriculture, and natural resources management, which he will describe in his presentation. Andres has 20 years of experience in legal information and records management, having worked in the office of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunal in the former Yugoslavia. The first 11 years as a paralegal and case manager, followed by 8 years as a database coordinator. Andres holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Williams College, a master's degree in development studies from the LSE, and a master's degree in financial management from SOAS. Andres speaks to us today from Rome in Italy. And our third speaker is Eva Dua. Eva is legal officer in the United Nations Environment Division of Environmental Law and Conventions. Eva leads the division's Infomea team's work on strengthening the capacity of national, regional and global environmental networks to collect, curate and monitor environmental law and to help identify and promote good practice and innovative trends in the field of multilateral environmental implementation. Eva holds a Master's of Law from King's London and a Master of Science degree in Law from the University of Vienna. And today Eva is speaking to us from Geneva, Switzerland. The floor is yours, Annie.
Thank you, Derek. Good day, my name is Annie Lukak. I work, as Derek mentioned, as documentation officer at the IUCN Environment Law Center in Bonn, Germany, and I'm a member of the EcoLex Management Unit. I would like to thank Eye on Earth for this unique opportunity, and it is my pleasure to present EcoLex, the gateway to environment law, together with Andres Feather-Robio from FAO and Eva Dua from UN Environment, who both later on will introduce their portals, FAOLEX and Infomea, which substantially contribute to EcoLex. The presentation will give an overview of EcoLex, what it covers and offers, provide some information on the partnership plus user statistics, and will introduce the 3 pillars of EcoLex, ELIS, VAULEX, and Informea. EcoLex is a comprehensive information service on environmental law and policy, accessible worldwide in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish, and free of charge for the user. It is jointly managed by FAO, IUCN, and UN Environment. In 2001, the 3 organizations signed a partnership agreement to link environmental law-related information from each of the partners and make all available through one portal. Each partner contributes different data sets to the portal, but all data have been systematically collected, structured, and harmonized to make them easy retrievable through one single site. And clearly, this is one of the strengths of EcoLex. What does EcoLex cover? It addresses all areas of law in 5 data sets, covering the entire spectrum of topics such as air, energy, food, agriculture, waste, water, wildlife, altogether 15 topics. FAO contributes the national legislation. IUCN contributes literature and treaties. UN Environment contributes treaty decisions and jurisprudence. Overall, the pool of information is quite impressive. With more than 220,000 documents, EcoLex is one of the most comprehensive platforms on environmental law. EcoLex can help you to answer questions like what are actions in place for a country? What environmental related case law exists in your country? Who are the participants of a given international agreement and which are their obligations? With a faceted search, EcoLex offers a responsive search experience. During the search, the user receives results and can further specify. You have several tools to search in EcoLex. A free text search, what we call Google type search in the top search bar, common filters, and specific filters. All tools can be used separately or in combination, and you can search in one data set only or across. The common filters are applicable to all data sets: subject, keyword, country, geographical area, language, and year period. In addition to the common filters, EcoLex offers filters which are specific to one data set. For example, for treaties, the depository or the status of a treaty in force or not. For court decisions, the type of court, international or national, higher or lower. For literature, author or publisher. I will show you now some examples how you can search and what you can find. You may be interested to find out on how your country or other countries address climate change adaptation in their legal system. For this search, you can use the top search bar. If you search the string climate change adaptation, use quotation marks. If you use the words without quotes, a match can also be an Environment Management Act, which refers to climate change and also to adaptation, but not necessarily to climate change adaptation. One result of this word string is the Cambodian Law on Disaster Management 2015. Here you see the full record, including all bibliographic data such as country, document type, date source, as well as subject, keywords, abstract, and full text. The full text is usually in the original language and only if available posted. In the next search, you look for court decisions related to wildlife. For this search, you may use the subject filter and select wild species and ecosystems from the drop-down list. You find, among other hits, this court decision from the High Court of Uganda, Greenwatch versus Uganda Wildlife Authority. You look for examples how countries address mining in context with protected areas. We recommend that you use the keywords mining and protected area. By default, all keywords are combined with an OR. But if you switch from OR to AND, you narrow down your search. We find, among other hits, a 2016 regulation on mining activities in Ecuador, amending a previous one from 2014, and the full text of the regulation. If a law or a regulation amends, cites, implements, or repeals another one, this is noted in the reference field. Cross-references are also available in the other data sets. If you look for literature related to traditional rights and forest conservation, you can combine the keywords traditional rights, customary rights within the subject forestry and select the literature dataset. The literature dataset is mainly a reference system. Due to copyright restrictions, full texts are only available from publications of the partner organizations. In our last example, we look for recent international agreements. Select the treaty data set and use the year period filter. You may refine your search and select one or more countries from the drop-down list. In the full display of the treaty record, here the Paris Agreement, you find not only the metadata, but also the participant list with related map and cross-references to other data sets such as a treaty decision. Before we hear more about FAULEX and Infomea, let me briefly speak about ELIS, the IUCN Environmental Law Information System. Not available as an independent web service though, but as an integral part of EcoLex. IUCN Law Center is a pioneer in systematically collecting and electronically processing environmental law information. ELIS was demonstrated at the UN Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm, 1972. And the first prototype was based on ELIS and developed in collaboration with UNEP and launched at the Governing Council in Nairobi already in 1999. In addition to its work on treaties and literature, the Law Center acts as EcoLex management unit. The management unit maintains the overall administration of EcoLex, including outreach, further developments, organization, etc. We continue to improve EcoLex, to meet user needs, and to keep track of technical developments. And the user proves us right. Since the last revamp in 2015, the number of users has grown significantly by 500%, with now more than 800,000 sessions a year, and it is still growing. In 2017, EcoLex was accessed from more than 230 locations worldwide. Most users came from the Americas, mainly South and Mesoamerica, Asia, and Africa. I now hand over to Andrés Fatarrubio from FAO, who will present FAULEX.
The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first of all, I would like to second Annie's thanks to Derek, the Iron Earth Alliance, for the hospitality and the opportunity to show EcoLex service and the underlying associated databases and platforms. As discussed by Annie, the dataset on national legislation in EcoLex is a syndicated content from the FAOLEX database. FAOLEX, as again was explained before, is FAO's database on national laws, regulations, bilateral agreements, and policies on food and agriculture and natural resource management. FAOLEX helps fulfill FAO's core function to assemble and analyze, monitor, and improve access to data and information in areas related to FAO's mandate. That is the first article of FAO's Constitution of 1945. Furthermore, we have in the same Constitution, Article 11, where there are reports by member nations and associated members. Well, it states that all member nations and associated members shall communicate regularly to the Director General the texts and laws pertaining to matters within the competence of the organization. FAOLEX has a long history and a strong mandate, and I believe that these constitutional references in part reflect the fact that FAO adopted visions, goals, and practices of its precursor organization, the International Institute of Agriculture, that was founded in 1905. The IIA was an intergovernmental body representing 40 countries and was the first IGO dedicated to agriculture. It acted as a clearinghouse for the collection of agricultural statistics, scientific knowledge, and social, economic, and legislative information. It ceased its operations in 1945 when FAO was founded. As an aside and a little bit of trivia, the IIA was also based in Rome and also had some beautiful surroundings like FAO does, and it was situated in the Villa Borghese Park. Now, the legal office of FAO took over this responsibility to collect, analyze, and disseminate legislative information. By the late 1950s, it started a series on food and agricultural legislation that compiled significant, innovative, and illustrative legislation from around the world, and it went through the trouble of translating all of these laws and regulations into English, French, and Spanish. This, at the end, when this was discontinued in 1994, there was a series of 44 volumes of this type of legislation. At the same time, in this period of time, there was over 200,000 pieces of legislation and regulations that were collected by the FAO Legal Office. We have recently digitalized this information, and we hope to make it available soon for historians, legal scholars, and researchers. In 1995, the efforts of the office were transferred into focusing on the FAOLEX database, which starts then. Next slide, please. Talking a little bit about the FAOLEX characteristics and assets. It's a deep collection. It's got over 140,000 legal and policy texts. We add, on average, 8,000 new records a year. This is usually a weekly update. It is in continuous operation for 23 years. Next one is the breadth. As Annie referred to, we cover all the FAO areas of interest and as well the EcoLex partners areas of environmental law. Global in its spectrum, we cover 185 countries, territories, dependencies, regions. We have regional information. We also have binding decisions and regulations from regional organizations like the EU, Mercosur, etc. We don't only put text in and collect text in and have a search engine run through trying to index it. We add a lot of additional metadata. We have templates of 23 different fields that we enter for each piece of legislation. All this effort on FAOLEX has always been and continues to be based on managed and funded by FAO resources. Next slide, please. The subject areas, as Annie said, we mimic and we replicate the structure that we have in EcoLex. It's essential for reliable data integration to either rely on the same nomenclature or to have mapping of similar data and metadata. As you can see, our data is relatively well distributed among subjects, but of course, naturally, the topics that are most concerned with FAO are at the top. So we have our biggest set is on food and nutrition, fisheries, livestock, cultivated plants, land, and so forth. I have little time, but I do want to complicate matters a little bit. I think it should be noted that every classification scheme is obviously a simplification, and as such it has its blind spots and in some respect is a straitjacket. If we think of water as a resource, we will see that legislation impacting the management of this resource comes from multiple vectors. So agricultural laws, laws on environment and environmental water standards, on ecosystem preservation, waste management, food safety, and of course, water sectoral legislation per se. All of these have bearing on the subject matter. So in FAOLEX, we have two different classification schemes. One, trying to give a broad view in terms of what is relevant for a subject matter, but then we also have an additional step where we say what is the primary subject or subjects of the texts. Next slide, please. Geographic, I think there's a little bit of one slide went wrong, but basically we see that a lot of our distribution skewed towards Europe and Central Asia, and the one at the red should be Latin America, I believe. Those are the ones that we have most material on, and I think that is in part the reason there is because of ease of accessibility. It's easier for us to find legislation online, and two, language. Probably you have easier time trying to analyze some languages other than others. I would like to say though that the ones in Africa that we see 9% of, and this is sub-Saharan Africa, because this distribution is based on the way FAO organizes its regional and national offices. So sub-Saharan Africa is only 9%, but it's still equivalent to more than 12,000 records. And I have to say that I would consider this one of our gem collections in there, because I don't find that there's anything out there that quite has the depth and the systematicity in the way we have this information. Next, please. So this is my last slide. It's about our efforts at disseminating FAOLEX data. So of course, we provide a lot to EcoLex, but we also have other data sharing agreements with other IGOs, like UN Habitat, also the Codex Alimentarius Commission, the joint body of FAO and WHO on food safety. We have collaborations with the Regional Fisheries Management Organization, the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean, and also civil society. We have COPLEX there with the International Cooperative Alliance. On the right-hand side, you see that there's a lot of more collaborations within the FAO.org domain. I'd like to point out, for example, the database on port state measures, providing information on national implementation of the treaty that entered into force in 2016 to fight illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. We have other thematic hubs on agroecology, family farming, pastoralism. There's the gender and land rights database, aquaculture, and more is on the works. Now, the ability for us to pass on our data really depends on leveraging our existing metadata and the constant effort we make at revising our metadata, adding new tags, adding new layers so that we can accommodate new information requirements based on these partnerships. The colors that you see are meant to give you a flavor for the spectrum of different data sharing agreements that have been set up. So in yellow are the ones where we facilitate partners to incorporate our content. We provide research assistance. We might try to improve the way we tag so that they get the information quicker. However, the content of what gets taken is determined ad hoc by the partners in an ad hoc manner. The ones in green are actually synchronized data integration solutions. Whatever is updated in Fowlex automatically cascades on to the other systems. And in purple is the ones where there's more information that is analyzed, constructed, consolidated in the databases. After all, Fowlex, the mainstay, is a library of documents. But these other databases are trying really to do more textual analysis, not only talk about a document as a whole, but talk about intra-textual analysis, what particular provisions show about particular topics, and also to make connections between different texts. Of course, legal information is, you cannot treat it in a vacuum. You need to understand how a lot of different texts interact among each others. And why do we go through this trying to disseminate Fowlex and getting into also more work in trying to map things to different initiatives? Of course, one part of it is that we hope to get more help from these other initiatives, both in terms of information feedbacks and expertise in telling us how they think the information can be better displayed, better crafted for their needs. And in this respect, we are greatly facilitated in our work by relying on the legal officers within the Law Development Service, whose mandate is to provide legal advisory service to governments, helping them to prepare laws and regulations, adopting best practices in compliance with international law. That's it for me. Thank you very much again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Andre. And now we're going to hand over to the third speaker, Eva.
Thank you also for the side of the UN Environment for this opportunity. And we are very excited to be part of the EcoLex partnership. And I will talk a bit about how the data on treaty decisions and jurisprudence is gathered on the side of UN Environment and its network of partners. Infomea is in essence a group of multilateral environmental agreements, or known as environmental conventions, who all share or all hold the data on the agreements that they administer and manage. And through the Infomea initiative, this information is shared. And in addition to that, over the years, UN Environment has collected case law and does so more and more. So here you can see the vast membership of the Infomea initiative that includes the Rio Conventions, the biodiversity-related conventions, the global ones, the chemicals and wastes conventions, and also the chemicals management strategy, as well as the Law of the Sea and a number of regional seas conventions and other regional conventions. So just to say that the group of multilateral environmental agreements that are part of this initiative is rather exhaustive at the global level, and then the initiative also benefits from a vast network of observers and collaborators. And I have to especially express the gratitude of this group to the European Union, who is supporting the collection effort since 2014. Next slide. So this is just, I will focus in this presentation on the services that are not yet included in EcoLex and that Infomea basically offers. It's a tool that collects, as I said, the data from the different secretariats and then allows you to filter by topic or by region. Annie, I think you can just click through the different elements of this slide. So you see that you can get information filtered that gives you then regional agreements from Latin America and the Caribbean, or you can filter the information according to a topic, as can be seen in the next iteration of a slide. The main data sets here again are profiles of the parties to the different agreements, where you would see which agreement a given country has been ratifying and has focal points on. You can see the legislation that the country has thanks to the FAOLEX collection that is linked behind the scenes, and you can also find case law information, other information on each of the parties. You can also have information on the internationally agreed goals and how to relate to some of the multilateral environmental agreements provisions, and you can also access a number of free online courses. So going down to the search tool of Infomea, again, we are focusing on information that is currently not available in EcoLex, but might be available in EcoLex in the near future. And that's, for instance, when we saw before in the EcoLex tool that you're looking for mining or protected areas, you can here also consult all the national submissions that countries have provided to the secretariats of the different multilateral environmental agreements. As here, for instance, we are talking of a national plan, an MBSAP, that has been submitted by Mongolia to the Secretariat of the Biological Diversity Convention, and the same from Guyana. And if you then can get also all submission of national reports that might have a reference to mining and protected areas. You also see the element of documents and literature. Again, the literature is through the interrelatedness between EcoLex and Infomea coming from the EcoLex tool, and is here shown to the audience that deals primarily with multilateral environmental agreements. Next slide, Annie. And here you can also see how then goals and internationally agreed goals can be referenced to a certain search term. In this case, we're looking at plastic debris, and we can find this term being echoed in a number of sustainable development goals, and also in the IG targets that are the goals under the biological diversity conventions, which again are then showing the collective important contribution by multilateral environmental agreements towards the achievement of internationally agreed goals. Next slide, Annie. Yeah, you have also seen before here that you are also able to find documents that have been issued by the different secretariats, and if you go to the next slide, where again this is complementing the literature that is coming from the ELI system that was provided earlier, and again where you can consult documents that have been issued for the purpose of building capacity or providing information or latest science. And another service by Infomea that is made available is basically a glossary or a thesaurus on international environmental law terminology that is used in the context of the different fora of multilateral environmental agreements, where you find definitions of terms and you find related terms, and that again allows you then to link the terminology to how it occurs in the different conventions, provisions, and preambles and operational articles. Next slide, Annie. As here, for instance, at the example of access and benefit sharing, where you are obtaining the definition of how this term is used in the context of the Convention of the Biological Diversity, you also have an overview of related broader and narrower terms as they appear in the field of other agreements, and then you're also able to look into the different agreements and how the provisions are actually further framing this concept. And that's fairly important given that the area of international environmental governance is rather fragmented and that many of the different agreements are actually hosted by many different UN or non-UN organizations. And therefore it's very important to show that irrespective of this institutional fragmentation, the whole area of law remains a unique body of international environmental law, and its coherent development is, of course, the most important goal for the whole area of environmental law. Next slide. And the last service that Infomea offers is the environmental courses. So you find on the e-learning portal about 28 short introductory courses that cover the different multilateral environmental agreements in a very short manner. So they are self-paced in that sense that you can control the speed and the resources that you assign to the individual courses. Usually they can be concluded within 3 to 5 hours, and they are all structured in a similar manner, and they conclude with a small quiz. Upon the positive responses or positive passing of the quiz, a user obtains a certificate of completion. And these courses are available in 2 to 3 languages and are available and are well visited around the world. So at the moment, there are about 13,500 registered learners, and they have obtained about 5,000 certificates. And it's a very good way of getting a rather quick overview of any agreement that somebody is involved with or working on and might not have had an opportunity to familiarize oneself with. So you can see that the courses are broken down into clusters of different topics. Here we're looking at the topic of climate, atmosphere, and land. And on the next slide, you can also see an example of a syllabus and the learning material that is then available for each of the courses. And the next slide is the example of one of the certificates. So in conclusion, this is a very joint effort that benefits from the commitment and from the input from a number of institutions, and we hope and we will be very much in favor of spreading the content into as many tools that might be able to benefit from this information, and look forward to expanding the group of audiences that could benefit from these resources. So with this, I will hand back to the overall colleagues from the EcoLex management unit at this point, and then look forward to any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eva. Before we give back the floor to Derek for the question and answer session, we thank all of you for your interest, your participation, and your patience to follow our presentation. Please feel free to contact each of us individually, also after the webinar, or use the feedback button, feedback@ecolex.org. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Annie. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to a representative from the Eye on Earth Alliance. Today's Eye on Earth Alliance representative is Mr. Bill Wintag from the Group on Earth Observations.
Thank you, Derek. This is Bill Sontag with the Geosecretariat, and I want to thank our presenters today. Just a quick note, I became familiar with the Infomea system in particular when we were working on a capacity building paper for the first Eye on Earth Summit back in 2010, I think, or 2011. So in that particular context, we realized that this served as a really valuable resource for capacity building in countries around the globe. At GEO and with our other Eye on Earth Alliance organization members. We're all attempting to contribute to the global ecosystem of information for environmental management, and it's important, and we're reminded today to take note and keep in context the regulatory and legal frameworks that underpin a great deal, if not all, environmental and natural resource governance globally. So I think that these resources can be very valuable to ministers, to policymakers, to help support the analysis that needs to be made for political and social action in countries. And my thanks again to the presenters and to Derek for including this important area of the environmental and natural resource information ecosystem in our series of webinars. So thanks to all, and Derek, I think we turn to questions at this point.
Thank you, Bill. The first question is from Leslie Adams, but Leslie says here that she has no microphone, so I will have to read it on her behalf. Her question is very simple. Could there be a way to include subnational information?
Well, if I may, if we're talking about national legislation, we do that a lot. We do that for many countries: Canada, Brazil, Switzerland, Germany. Yeah. We do not exclude subnational information. Of course, we have limited resources. We might not be having all the information for all countries, but certainly there are very interesting subnational legislation that comes out. For example, if you think of Italy in terms of agroecology, many of the spearheading legislation is at a subnational level, and we certainly would like to showcase them.
And Leslie has come back with a subsequent part to the question. Perhaps countries could be encouraged to create a national EcoLex for subnational info. Any other thoughts on Leslie's comments?
I think also that, of course, some conventions, they collect information at the sub-national level when it's related to a national site, like a Ramsar site or a World Heritage site, or ecosystems that are considered particularly under individual conventions. And so in that respect, there would already be some sub-national information, also reports on certain areas, etc.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question in the queue from Katharina Lapin.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the information and the background information you gave in this talk. I found it always very wonderful to find information in FOLEX and EcoLex, but I found it quite difficult to interpret this legislation. So, for example, to find out whether this legislation is locally applied or nationally. So basically, it fits to the question you almost answered, but I just have a remark. Could it be possible to visualize it, to map down the area of application of a legislation in FOLEX? Are you mapping it? That was my question.
If you mean visual mapping, no, we don't use them, but it's something that we need to improve in terms of data visualization, yes. Yeah. But in terms of the way we present our records, usually it's quite clear if it's national or subnational, because for subnational we give the country, and then in parentheses we give the subnational entity. But I take your point about better visualization.
All right, thank you very much.
May I add, this point, visualization, is also on the agenda of the next EcoLex Steering Committee, which takes place this autumn. And we are already in discussion with our IT consultant, but the three partners have, of course, to go into depth and details, and before we can really implement together with the service provider.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And a question from myself, Derek, here. The various platforms that you've described have information on the various treaties. Does that go down as far as information about the reporting obligations and more specifically the content of the reports? The Iron Earth community is a focus on data, and I'm wondering about to what extent we can use EcoLex as a mechanism to define the data agenda and the data collection agenda for environmental monitoring organizations.
I think this is a question for Infomea. Eva?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, indeed, we have at the moment about 5,000 national reports in the Infomea and about 600 national plans, action plans, implementation plans, depending on how they are called under the different MEAs. And you will find that at the moment you have a keyword search function that actually drills into the reports depending on in which language they have been submitted. But as you say, it's extremely interesting and very, very resourceful what is included in these reports, and many countries are actually also very putting a lot of resources into the report submission, and therefore making sure that these reports can be reused is one of the important things that is on the agenda for the next steering committee meeting. And also the possibility of integrating the reports is something that is considered at one of the next EcoLex steering committee meetings, so that they are also available in EcoLex for further research.
Yeah.
So there, in fact, are no more questions in the queue at the moment. Very briefly, some news from the Iron Earth Network. This is in the handout, so I won't go into the details, but a capacity building workshop in Budapest, Hungary, that has its origins in the Iron Earth movement from some years ago with our friend Central European University. In October, the UN World Data Forum takes place. This is an important event, and this year, by fortunate coincidence, is in the same country that I'm speaking to, the United Arab Emirates. One follow-up, citizen science. There was a call for participation, and that is open until just a couple of days more. The URL is there, and so with that, we'll bring today's webinar to a close. We greatly appreciate your feedback on our webinar in the closing questionnaire that will follow, and there is an opportunity there if you had specific questions and you wanted to share more information with our speakers. You can do so through the closing questionnaire. So thank you, and until our next webinar on artificial intelligence for Earth by Microsoft Research on May the 23rd, goodbye and have a great rest of the day.